I grew up in a cult. At 18 years old, I was married off to my first cousin. He was badly in debt and he had a drug problem. So they realized he had good credit. Thank you, Robyn, for fixing my credit.
I know. Thank you.
And they wanted to steal his identity, and that is why he threw me out, that I was going to be in the way.
And that is the tamest part of her story. You will not believe what else she endured. Dr. Robyn Odegaard, she didn't just survive, she turned her chaos into currency. They call her the Mental MacGyver because when your mind turns against you, she's the one who rewires the entire system. She's been the mental reset coach for corporate CEOs, surgeons, lawyers, professional athletes, founders, and yes, even mob bosses. She's the author of multiple books, including Stop the Drama, The Whole Foods Muscle Way, and Unleashing Firepower. She's also earned a doctorate degree of applied organizational psychology from Rutgers University.
Perfectionism is a trauma response. So is hyper-independence, because somewhere in your early stage, you weren't able to trust the people around you to take care of you.
She calls it head trash and says most of us are carrying chaos that isn't ours. She teaches the 5 paradigms of success out of chaos, from tactical strategy to psychological self-rescue.
People don't seek help when everything's great. That's not when they come for help. Some of them come to me because nothing's going sideways and they're unhappy. I've gotten that one.
What are the 5 paradigms?
What do you want to be different? Strategic plan and your tactical plans. You've got psychological barriers, which is your head trash and self-sabotage. The 5th one, people, places, things, and habits that either help or hurt. I will be the rock in the hurricane, and I will grab onto your anchor and I will haul in it as hard as I can to bring you into shore. But if you cut the rope, I'm not swimming out after you.
She's not here to hold your hand. She's here to help you face the storm, so you never have to white knuckle your way through life again. Because surviving chaos isn't enough. She'll show you how to build something powerful from what tried to break you. And once you hear what's really been hijacking your mind all these years, you won't hear that voice in your head the same way again. In this roller coaster, made for Netflix story episode, Dr. Robyn will show us what it means to carry chaos, and more importantly, how to take it out of the head trash that's holding us back. So let's jump in and see what this story looks like. You call yourself a mental MacGyver, but your real story of growing up in a cult and being helped out by the cartel suggests if you've navigated more chaos than most CEOs will ever see. Can you share with us that wild journey that led you to coach leaders through your own WTF moment?
Yes, I can give you that background story. So yes, I grew up in a cult. I am the oldest of 8 children. And at 18 years old, I was married off to my first cousin. He was 11 years my senior. And I remember really distinctly I was a senior in high school when I was a junior in high school. My dad came to me and said he had asked for my hand in marriage. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing then. And I was so brainwashed, I didn't realize that I could say no. It never occurred to me.
Wow.
So at 18, I graduated from high school, got married, and moved 3,000 miles away from home in 3 weeks. But when I got to North Carolina, it took me about 6 months to realize 3 things about my new husband. 1, he was not very bright. 2, he was badly in debt. And 3, he had a drug problem. Trifecta. Good job.
The trifecta, right?
But those 3 things ended up being silver linings. Because he was badly in debt, he needed me to get a job.
Right.
Married women in my family don't work outside the home, so that was a big deal.
Okay.
Because he wasn't very bright, he could not maintain the grooming that had been put in place by the cult that, oh, you're not smart, you're just a woman, you need a man to put a roof over your head. And so I'm working, I'm making my own money, and I'm realizing, wait a minute, I'm not as dumb as they thought I was. But the last thing my dad said to me before we walked down the aisle was, you are no longer welcome in my home as a single woman. So where was I going to go?
Wow.
So
okay.
I stayed, and I am definitely resilient to the point of being stubborn. There's a fine line between resilience and stubborn, and I cross it. And I made a commitment, so I stayed. 8.5 years later, my husband threw me out. He told my dad it was because I was lazy. My dad called and gave me the riot act and said if I had been appropriately submissive, I would have been able to make it work. and that I better not take his name back because I was bringing shame on the family. What I learned later, because my ex came back later and wanted to try again, and I laughed at him, but he was like, oh, let me just tell you what happened. I'm like, oh, by all means, what happened? And what had happened was he had gotten himself involved with a cartel. So he starts naming names. He starts talking about people who I remember. Like I'm like, yeah, I know those people. He said, did you know they were into cocaine? I'm like, we were at parties where there was cocaine on the table. Yes, I knew they were into cocaine. Did you know they were part of the cartel? No, I did not know that. So what had actually happened was they realized he had good credit. Thank you, Robyn, for fixing my credit.
I know. Thank you.
And they wanted to steal his identity, which they did do. He almost ended up in federal prison. But they recognized that I was going to be a problem, that I was going to be in the way because I did our family finances. Being in the way of the cartel is not somewhere you want to be. But fortunately for me, they were able to convince my then husband that I was holding him back and he could do better than me. And that is why he threw me out. So if I ever write that book, it's going to be called I'd like to thank the cartel for getting me out of the cult.
That needs to be like a Netflix documentary / real life movie. There is so much there, Dr. Robyn. Wow.
And that's just till I was like 27.
Right. So
there's more after that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's quite a bit. So I want to dig a little bit deeper because, everyone puts labels, cults and things of that nature. And sometimes we don't recognize that some resemblance of that could be at work, could be at home, is in our everyday life. And someone who's gone through it, lived through it, and now is a successful business owner, what are some of the similarities that someone who's listening to this podcast may not recognize that they could be in that similar framework, either within themselves or in their environment?
The biggest one that I noticed is if you bring up an idea that has potential to be a good idea for change, and they are like, no, we don't do that. That's not how we do it here. This has always worked. We're going to do it like this. Anytime someone has really strict rules about this is how it's done and they won't take any outside influence, that for me is a red flag.
And why is that?
Because it means they're not open to growth. It could mean that they're trying to maintain power. Like they're trying to maintain a power and authority dynamic.
Okay.
So in a cult, obviously, as a woman, I had no power. I wasn't allowed to have power. I wasn't smart. I wasn't capable. Women are too emotional, all those things. They were creating all these rules that kept me as a one down.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in an organization where they are purposefully creating a situation where your ideas can't be heard, you're not given reasons, they're just told no, that's a red flag. Why are they trying to keep you in a one down position? What's happening there?
So if someone that's listening to this and resonates to what you're saying, and you've had some personal experience with this, what are some things that individuals can do to A, recognize they're in that situation, but B, how do you start getting out of that situation?
So I have to say at this juncture, I did not realize I grew up in a cult till after I took a class in college and was studying cults.
Okay.
And then I was like, wait a minute. This sounds like my life.
I was going to say, what was it that you read or said that light bulb went off?
When I started reading about how in cults they maintain control, they use something that you can't actually verify. Like they take biblical text, they tell you what it means, and then they tell you why you're wrong and going to hell because of it. And you can't verify that.
Right.
Like, I don't read original text. I don't know what the translation's right. So if they create a situation where they make you wrong in a way that you have no way of verifying whether you're right or wrong, that's not ideal.
Okay.
But so in organizations, what you'll see is they end up with these completely unsafe cultures. Like they're psychologically not safe. And you might get different stories from different leaders. So this is an example. No, I'm not sharing any names, but here's an example.
Yes.
I have a client who was recently told that they were probably going to fire her.
Okay.
And that she should be ready. Now, this is on Friday. She should be ready. They're going to let her go, blah, blah reasons. Well, Monday comes around and she doesn't hear anything. And she's like, so she finally goes to HR and is like, hey, do you have paperwork for me? Like, what's happening? And what she finds out is her direct boss is like, oh, I went to bat for you. We're not going to fire you. We're keeping you on. You're great. She's like, okay. I had to protect you from so-and-so. Well, 2
Mm.
days later, she beats up with so-and-so, and so-and-so's like, oh, did you know I protected
Yeah.
you? The CEO was going
Everybody's
to
done.
fire you. I protect. So their stories like
Right.
completely don't match. And that is not psychologically safe because she has no idea who she can actually trust, which is
Hmm.
basically she can't trust anybody.
And that affects performance, that in health, that in everything. That if there's no
Mm-hmm.
safety in the work environment or home, then you're constantly in
Mm-hmm.
survival mode. You're constantly wondering, where's the next threat coming from?
Right. And you
Wow.
can't ever perform at your best because if you make a mistake, you know, if you perform at peak, you make mistakes. That's
Right.
what happens at peak. If you perform at peak and make a mistake and they kick you for it, then you're not going to perform at peak. You're going to
Hmm.
perform at perfection, which doesn't accomplish anything.
So cults and mafia and everything else. So walk us through how those extreme WTF moments led you to doing what you do today.
So once I got escaped from all of that nonsense, I started playing competitive beach volleyball. And I did have a real job. Like, don't let me fool you. I did not pay my bills playing volleyball. I made a
Okay.
little bit of money playing volleyball. I had a real job to pay the bills.
Okay.
But I started playing competitive volleyball. And what I noticed when I was playing is that there were days I could get on the court and I could do no wrong. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could play
Yeah.
that game at peak level. Do not even play with me. I will wipe the sand with you. And then there were other days I would get on the court and my partner would like hold the volleyball out to me and be like, Robyn, this is a volleyball. Have you ever seen one before? Where is your game? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And so when I had the opportunity to go to college when I was in my early 30s, I wanted to understand that.
Hmm.
Why is it that something I'm so good at and I can do, like I have the muscle memory, I know how to do this, there are days I can't do it. Like, where does my game go? So that was my impetus when I went to college was I want to understand peak performance, how we reach it, how we maintain it, and what we do when we lose it. So that's what I ended up studying in college. And then I made my own mistake. I married a narcissistic, closeted bisexual, 0 out of 5 stars, do not recommend.
Jeez.
That was a whole separate challenge. Obviously hadn't done enough therapy, needed to go around that circle again. But with that, I was going to say responsibility, with that marriage, he actually took a job in London, England, and then he wanted me to come over there and host wine tastings and dinner parties and basically be executive arm candy wife. And that's where I got the opportunity to talk to a lot of very powerful people and realize, wow, they are lonely and psychologically isolated and bored and angry, and they have all these and nowhere to put them. Because you can't tell your board any of that because that'll get you a vote of non-competence.
Right.
You're not going to tell your employees. That would be a bad idea. As one of my clients said, I don't want to take it home to my wife. That just ruins the night for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was that cycle of my life, that what's the fix to this moment, that made me realize, wow, there's a gap. Because if people like that go to regular therapy where a therapist says things like, what do you think you should do? If I knew that, why would I be
exactly.
here? I don't have.
One of the
I don't
most
know.
frustrating questions right
I'm
there.
looking for help here. So regular therapy isn't a good fit for them.
Right.
But if they hire a traditional executive coach, they're going to get a lot of communication and conflict resolution and team building, great skills. And yes, we do that. But then all of the stuff that's going on in their life and all of the stress and the angst and whatever, they're not qualified to talk about that. So that's the challenge.
So you go to peak performance, you're now around high net worth, high performing individuals, and you find a common trait. So what was it that you heard or did you see in all of these individuals that most people are attempting to become, right? They want to be that. That's who they're looking up to. What did you see was the common trait that led you to the fact they're lonely, they have no outlets, they're sad? What was the common thing you found there?
They talk to me.
Yeah, you do have that.
I would be the person where I was busy hosting a dinner party and I'm keeping track of who's drinking white and who's drinking red and who has bubbly water and who has flat water. And I've got all this going on. And then, during the cocktail hour, someone comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Robyn, how are you?" And I'm like, "Good, how are you?" And they just unload on me. And I'm like, "Oh, you're not okay. Your life looks really good from the outside, but you're not actually okay."
Was there, in these conversations, were there anything that was a common thread?
Some of them are creating their own chaos.
Okay.
And that's because when you get to a certain place where you have a lot of money, you can make mistakes that create chaos. You can get involved with drinking too much, drugs, prostitutes, name your vice of choice.
Right.
So some of them are creating their own chaos. And some of them really struggled with self-sabotage around, I don't know how I got here. This is a mistake. This was just luck. I don't know what I'm doing. Imposter
It's a
syndrome.
syndrome.
Like I
Yeah.
saw some of that stuff going on too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I resonate what you were talking about as volleyball, because I was also in volleyball. And when you are in the flow, nothing goes wrong. Right. But in going back to something you said that it's always stuck with me is that you get that head trash that affects everything else. And sometimes you don't even realize where it comes from, which now what you're saying is whether you're an athlete or, financially well-to-do or at the top of your career, that head trash can affect how you perform. So what did you, in your studies and in your experience, what is head trash? And then how does it affect our ability to perform at our highest level?
So it's interesting when I say head trash, the audience always nods.
Yeah.
But when I ask, what is head trash? I get different answers from different people.
What are some of the answers you've gotten?
Different things. It means different things to different people. So for some people, it's actually words, like they actually get a running commentary of words. For other people, it's just feelings, whether it's anxiety or guilt or shame, or maybe they're stressed or they're overwhelmed. Dread. I get a lot of dread is a big one. Insecurity. I had one person say barely suppressed panic. I get different answers, but basically it's this constant self-critical soundtrack of your brain that kills your confidence. So it might be words, it might just be feelings, but it's going to hijack your self-esteem, and you might feel like you're being hounded by a mean voice in your head, like you have this unhealthy, abusive relationship with the voice in your head. So the question that I ask when people say that, so you've got this emotionally abusive relationship, is it your voice or are you listening? And if it's both, then who told you the words that you're saying to yourself? Where did they come from?
So is it your voice or someone else's? And then where did it come from?
So is it your voice or are you listening?
Okay.
Because if you're talking, you can't listen. And if you're listening, you can't talk. So what's happening that you're getting both? And we kind of have to pick that apart to see what's happening.
So in your experience, what tends to be the source of this track?
Oh, that's individual to each person. But some of it could be an authority figure in your past said something to you.
Okay.
It could be that you were given the belief that you have to be perfect, right? Perfectionism is a trauma response.
Right.
So is hyper-independence, this belief that you have to do it all right all of the time, all by yourself. Hyper-independence is a trauma response because somewhere in your early stage, you weren't able to trust the people around you to take care of you. And a lot of successful people have recreated that in their success. They've recreated the fact that they don't have anyone around them they actually trust to catch the ball if they drop it.
Interesting. So I always said you'll always get the biggest imprint between ages 1 and 7, the people that are around you, and then it just gets polished as you get older. And so is that effect, like when you were talking about your days in volleyball, that you could be on your game, no one can touch you, and then all of a sudden you don't even recognize the volleyball, which help us, whether it's sports or work. How do we recognize that head trash is affecting us? And more importantly, how do we start to fix it?
So to be able to recognize it, the thing I like to ask people, this is my favorite question. I think I've asked you this question. What do you want to be different? Because if I ask you, what do you want to be different? Your brain goes into what's not working, what needs to be fixed, what's broken, almost into complaining. And anybody can do that. Whereas if I say to you, what's your dream?
Right.
Then I get pie in the sky, right? What's your goal? I get all of this chat GPT words.
Right.
I don't get you. But if I say to you, what do you want to be different? You'll start telling me what's actually going on and what's happening. And you're going to notice head trash because you're going to start talking to me, assuming that you trust me, about what is happening for you, your reality. And I tell this joke sometimes when I speak. What's the difference between perception and reality? Perception is what you think. Reality is what I think. And so I have no way of telling what your reality is unless you tell me. And
Hmm.
that means we have to unpack what your emotional brain thinks. And that's hard because your emotional brain doesn't have access to language. And sometimes when I talk to clients, they'll be talking to me and they'll say, "That sounds really dumb when I say it out loud." And I say, that's because this is the first time your logical brain, the part of your brain that has access to language and you want involved in critical thinking, has actually heard what you have to say because your emotional brain has had to put it into language for me.
Hmm. Are there any other techniques like that that could help us to start unpacking some of these things that we don't even recognize are there, but create that track in our head?
So the biggest thing that I tell people is you've got to create silence because so many of us never have silence. We have input from email, we have input from the radio, we have input from our
Yeah.
spouse, we have output for meetings. It's always on. And so the only time that your logical brain is quiet is at 3 a.m. And then you're awake at 3 a.m. because your brain is running because it's the only time it's had a chance to think. So if you can purposefully create time where your emotional brain has a second to go, "Hey, we're not okay over here." For some people, that's in the shower, although people sometimes have the radio on in the shower. I'm like, okay, that's ruining your quiet time.
Mm.
I encourage clients to not drive with the radio on. And when I tell people drive in silence, sometimes they're like, "That's so hard." I'm like, that's because you're not used to silence. Meditation, obviously, is a big
Right.
one. Like, people hear about that. Meditation is a little more challenging for some people, but if you can purposefully create silence, I like to hike and
Hmm.
just see what comes up. Pay attention to what your brain does when it doesn't have input or output expectations.
Yeah, I love, I used to do like long drives. I would go to see one of my mentors like 5 hours away, and I would always
Mm,
have to have a notepad attached to the windshield because amazingly,
mm,
2 and 3 hours into that drive, my brain would start to come up with
mhm,
all these ideas because now there's no song, there's no music, there's no nothing, just that the continuous hum of the car.
mhm,
And it's exactly what you were saying. All of a sudden, it gives it a chance to relax and to think things through and work through things. And I got the best ideas in those long drives when there
mhm,
was absolute silence. And I think we take that for granted. We don't take enough time to decompress and be in silence and allow
mhm,
ourselves to think. It's almost like we're afraid to be in silence, and who knows what's going to come at me from that
mhm.
point of view.
Well, and if you have an emotionally abusive relationship with yourself, that's a scary place to be with yourself like that.
How do you know if you have an emotionally abusive relationship
If
with
you're
yourself?
afraid of silence and
Ding,
when
ding,
you're
ding, ding.
silent, your brain is mean to you, you have an emotionally abusive relationship with yourself. You should never be mean to yourself. That is psychologically super unhealthy
Why are we mean to ourselves?
because people who we loved and who we believed would take care of us were mean to us, and
Mm,
we took that in as that's how I'm supposed to talk to myself,
like being in a cult, right? Reprogrammed. And that's what I'm saying. It's
right?
it's amazing, you can put a label on one organization or one group of people, but so many little elements of that can be seen in society as a whole,
Mhm.
whether it's how our parents spoke to us, how we reacted to trauma, how we handle different situations. It becomes our default because I did
Mhm.
this and therefore this outcome happened, so I'm going to continue to do so.
Mhm. And the scars stay.
Oh,
I mean, I've
yeah.
done a lot of work on myself to get to where I am. And to this day, if a white man calls me stupid, it hurts me because my father always told me that I wasn't that bright, that anytime I succeeded, it was because someone else didn't try.
Mm.
So to this day, when that happens, I have to catch it because my brain will run off on a wild goose chase of "you're dumb, you don't belong here, who do you think you are?"
That
Like, I get on
track.
the train and go for a ride.
Right. It's that
I have to
track.
catch it. Yep.
So do you think that once you're aware and you have the framework and tools that we can reprogram our brain?
You can catch it.
Okay.
You can notice it. You can see it happening and you can stop it. But that means you also have to recognize your psychosomatic response. Your psychosomatic response is how your body responds when you're psychologically injured. So let's go back to someone calling me stupid because that's a really good example and an
Mm-hmm.
easy way for me to explain it. when someone either calls me or insinuates that I'm not bright and I don't know what I'm talking about, it feels like a gut punch. My solar plexus hurt, and I feel like I'm physically being injured. And I know in my brain now that when that happens, I need to take a breath and I need to let that feeling pass before I respond. Because if I don't, I'm going to say something I regret, because my emotional brain is the part of me that is on track, not my critical thinking, logical brain. So you have to catch, how do you feel when you're under that kind of attack?
Right.
For some people, it's pressure in their shoulders. They might flush. They might feel their gut. Whatever happens for you, you have to know that. And then you have to know how to respond to it when you see it or feel it, to go, oh, I need a break. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, and not respond right away.
So you deal with a lot of, strong, powerful alpha executives. Do you recall a time where you had to pull someone out of their emotional quicksand and lead them to safety?
Oh yeah, happens all the time.
Give me an
Because
example.
unfortunately for men in our culture, they're not taught to engage with their emotional aspects. So they
Right.
only have one option, angry. And they go
Intense.
off the charts angry when they're actually disappointed or frustrated or hurt or whatever. Like, they're angry. And I do have conversations with my clients pretty early on when they hire me about, let's talk about feeling words. I know they're not fun to talk about, but if you can't talk about feeling words, I'm not going to be able to help you when you end up in that head spin space. If I haven't had that conversation, sometimes I'll just take a pause and I'll look at them and I'll say, look, I'm on your side. This seems like a disproportionate response to what's happening. Can we take a second and talk through what's going on here?
So I've always wanted to discuss, because I'm confused in a sense that you have extremely successful people, at the top of the career, financially, business, sports, whatever it may be. But what you're saying is that they are emotionally stunted in some ways, that they react angrily, or they have this head trash that affects a lot of their life. How do
It's
they
not
get
just
to
them. All of us do.
True. But again, everyone, we look up to individuals that are at that level. How do they get to that level? And what is causing the head trash if everything seems to be perfect?
Have you ever read the book Fooled by Randomness?
No, I have not.
So it's a really good book. There's several books that are on that topic, but Fooled by Randomness is the easiest to read. And it basically talks about how if 200,000 people start off on a path, and along the way, most of them fall off because they don't get there, but then one gets to the very, very top. We look at that one and we say, how you did it was the right way. You were successful. Let's look at your path. We're going to all repeat that. And that's like looking at someone and this is my story. This isn't from the book. This is like looking from someone who wants to get from New York to London, and they decide in New York they're going to get on a cruise ship, and then they get part way and there's a tanker, and they get on a tanker, and then they get a little further and there's a whale, and they get on the whale, and they hodgepodge, there's a turtle, they hodgepodge together this path that they managed to get from New York to London. And when they get to London, everybody's like, oh, you made it from New York to London. You're amazing. Tell us your ways. Teach us how to do it. And he talks about all these ways, and people are like, okay. So this person gets on the cruise ship, and then they get to where the tanker's supposed to be, and the tanker's late. And they're like, there's no tanker. I have to swim. Like, it's completely different. So I feel like when we look at people who are super successful, we expect them to have some kind of magical property about them because they're successful. And it just... things worked out for them. Yeah, they made good decisions. Maybe they started out on third base and thought they hit a triple. I don't know. But they are human, and they have the same problems that we have, often magnified by the fact that they don't have anyone who tells them the truth.
And that's true. I mean, when you look at very successful people and all of a sudden they start selling their process, everyone buys them, because if you must have the magical, secret to how this works. So if I just do what you did, I'll get to where you are, without really looking at exactly some of the things. What's unique to that person, their upbringing, their skill, their ability, their IQ, the environment they were in at the time, who they've met, the network around them. And so you look at social media, and everyone wants to emulate everybody that's there without knowing the back story. Exactly. And you said something that was profound around the human condition, right? We are all human. We all have our own ways of doing things. And when it comes to peak performance, how does the human condition affect how we perform at our highest level?
So the human condition is a very broad subject, obviously.
Yes.
And some of that is, how does it affect us? Well, some of it is, is your human condition that you were brought up in a situation where you had to work really hard? And are you willing to put in more work now than other people? That was me. And that's part of the reason I was able to get out of the situations I was in, is I was willing to work really, really hard. The drawback to that is there's a part of my brain that thinks it has to be hard.
Mm.
And then if I do it the easy way, that somehow I'm cheating. That's the dark side of that particular benefit.
Right.
I work hard, but then I think I have to. But so the human condition, when you get to a situation where you're super successful and everyone around you depends on you to pay their bills, they are not going to tell you the truth. And then you're going to think, because we've all heard the term echo chamber, you're going to think that the way you do it is the only way to do it. The way I kind of describe this is, if you've been successful being a hammer and no one ever tells you there's any other tool around you, then you're going to think that being a hammer is the only option, and you're going to be a hammer for everything.
That's true, because that's all you know, right?
That's all you know. And
that's all you know.
And you've been rewarded.
Yeah.
You've been rewarded for being a hammer. Why would you be anything else?
Yeah, that brain likes that dopamine hit. So if you do something, you get that dopamine hit, you're going to want to keep doing it because it feels good until you have a different way. So you've had a very, shall we say, interesting journey.
Eclectic.
Right? Eclectic. I like that. Eclectic. Yes. That most people probably would have not experienced and maybe have their own other experiences in life. So we understand your biggest tough UTF scenarios you've had. So through your journey, what are some of the probably the most critical stories we tell ourselves or things that we're not aware of that you have been able to create a fix, some clarity that now allows you to keep that peak performance consistent?
Ooh, there's a couple of different ones. So the first one, I guess, would be forgiving myself for believing people who lied to me. Because it is not my responsibility to be a sleuth and be able to tell if someone's lying. If someone's lying, that's on them.
Right. I like that.
But if I let them lie to me twice, that's on me.
Yeah.
So let people tell you who they are, believe them.
Okay.
That's part of it. But then one thing that I've had to do, and this is a more recent thing as I've gotten more successful, is not feel shame for the person I had to become the person I am.
Oh, that is huge, because we all feel that. Because either we didn't have control, or when we finally recognize that you've been that for so long. Can you dig a little bit deeper into that one?
Yeah, so it's really easy for me. For a long time, I didn't tell my story because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed about the fact that I grew up in a cult. And I have family now who tell me I didn't grow up in a cult and I'm being dramatic and ridiculous and whatever. And I always say that sounds like something somebody in a cult would say. But like, I was embarrassed about it. I was embarrassed that I allowed myself to be married off. I didn't understand grooming.
Sure.
I was embarrassed that I stayed for as long as I did. And I mean, at the end of that marriage, I was living on a catfish farm on a slab of concrete, plywood walls, and a tin roof where I had to cut the grass in the bedroom. I was living in a shack.
You can't make this up.
No, like you wouldn't believe it if I wrote it in a book.
No.
If it was fiction.
It was fiction,
But
maybe.
there's so many things that I was embarrassed about,
Sure.
and I wouldn't tell my story. And what I realized was that I was doing people, I wasn't being just to them, because I was basically saying, oh, I'm Dr. Robyn. I have a doctoral degree. I have my act together. I wasn't showing them I had to come through nonsense, and my act isn't always together.
Right.
So don't feel shame for who you had to be to become the person you are. The other piece to that is, don't become so proud of who you are that you forget to grow.
Say that again.
Don't become so proud of who you are that you forget to grow. So I am not going to sit here and tell you this is the peak of who I am.
Right.
I hope in 5 years I've grown more and I've learned more and I've developed more. I don't want to get stuck here, even though here is pretty impressive compared to where I used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the things that you do with your clients? Right? Where do they tend to be when they start? And how do you help them get to that balance of peak performance, of psychological safety, and being honest with yourself?
They often come to me because something is going sideways. You know, people don't seek help when everything's great. That's not when they come for help. They come for help when something's going sideways, and whatever that looks like for them. And they come in different places. Some of them come to me because business is going sideways. Some of them come to me because their life is going sideways. Some of them come to me because nothing's going sideways and they're unhappy. That I've gotten that one.
That's
I
an
had someone,
interesting one.
he came to me, he had just sold a business, and he came to me and he said, Robyn, I have all of this money and my wife doesn't like me, my kids don't like me, and I don't think I like me. I'm like, okay, let's start there. And that's very much the, what do you want to be different? Right? That's where
Right.
you start. What do you want to be different? And once you know what you want, they want to be different, whatever they come to me for. And sometimes they come to me for something and that turns out not to be the problem at all.
Right.
Like once we get to talking, then they realize, oh, wait, that's not the problem. I have a different problem. That's okay. That's part of what I do, right? The ability that nothing is TMI. You can tell me literally anything and we'll go from there. But
And
once we know that, then we can start looking at, okay, what kind of strategy do we need? What kind of tactical plans do we need? And this is my 5-point paradigm for creating success out of chaos, which is on my website. There's a page on my website. So tactical, strategic, all of that's great. Any organizational person can do that for you. What makes me different is I also talk about psychological barriers. And that's where we start coming into the head trash, the stuff you know you should be doing. You're not doing it. The stuff that is like, well, I've always done it this way. And this is the thing I tell my clients is that how things are today, the cause is in the past. Whatever is today, the cause is in the past. And the easiest thing you can do is make today exactly like yesterday, which is going to make tomorrow like today. So I know, right? The change is in the present. So the cause is in the past, the change is in the present. The problem is the motivation is in the future.
future. Yeah.
Your future self, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are terrible as humans about doing things for strangers, and your future self is a stranger.
Yeah.
So you somehow have to drag that motivation from the future into the present so that you can do something different today. So tomorrow isn't just a repeat of yesterday.
Yeah. One way, as one of my mentors put it was, always put your future self in a position of success, and even in the smallest things. As simple as setting the timer on the coffee maker so when your future self wakes up tomorrow, it doesn't have to think about coffee. Or lay out your clothes out so you don't have to spend time. What am I wearing today? Right? What are the little things that if you really care about your future self that you can do today that will set you up for success tomorrow? And then again and again and again. And it starts with those small little things. And once you start doing those things, you realize, wow, I am setting myself up for success. And now you can do that in the bigger things. But I don't want to miss what you just said. You said there are 5 paradigms. What are the 5 paradigms?
So the first one is, what do you want to be different?
What do you want to be
Then
different,
you've got
Holly?
your strategic plan and your tactical plans. Those are basic organizational development stuff. You've got psychological barriers, which is your head trash and self-sabotage. That's 4. The 5th one is the people you have around you. People, places, things, and habits that either help or hurt. And if you watch my TEDx talk, you know the very last thing I say is, when you learn there's no water in a well, stop going there looking for a drink. And so often we have people in our lives who we want something from. We've got love, money, success, them to be proud of us, whatever it is. We want something from them, and they do not have it to give us.
Why do we do that, Dr. Robyn? I mean, especially
because we want people to love us.
Oh, okay. I mean, I know I'm a firstborn, don't have a very good relationship with my father. You're always looking for that, appreciation, acknowledgement from a parental figure, So why is that?
Because they were the person who literally kept you from dying when you were a child.
True.
They fed you, they clothed you, maybe not well, put a roof over your head, whatever. Like, they kept you from dying. And so deep in the core of who you are, they are the most important person to you. They are the person who kept you alive. So of course you want them to be proud of you. And being able to turn that around and say, I can be proud of myself and that's good enough, is hard.
Now, is that because
you say, I'm proud of you?
Is it because there's something great in our DNA because of that parental figure keeping you alive versus you can be self-sustaining?
There is definitely a DNA aspect to it, right? The cultural aspect of it. Not only that, but if you tell people, oh, I cut my parents out of my life, they're like, Why would you do that? They never, you know what they don't ask? What did they do?
Like, what did they, what caused you to do that?
Right. I kind of joke and say, a good friend will help you move. A great friend will help you move bodies. I have a friend who the only question she'd ask is, "What'd he do?"
What do you,
Right? That's love. And of course, I joke. I would never move a body.
yes.
Do not send the FBI after me. But that's the thing, right? Is we're looking, especially with our parental relationships, we're looking for them to go, "I am so impressed with you. You did good," because
That
they kept us
acknowledgement.
alive.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to go through these 5, and I want you to tell me what's the WTF, but one thing they can use to fix. So what was number 1 again?
What do you want to be different?
What do you want
have
to be
clarify
different?
what you're doing. What do you want to be different?
Right. So we want to clarify. What is one thing we can do to help clarify that?
If you can answer that question effectively, you are on the road to clarifying. And that can be, I encourage you to talk out loud, because if you just think about it, your emotional brain doesn't really get a voice.
Right.
So talk out loud, whether it means you're journaling, write it down,
Right.
talk to someone, get on Zoom and turn on the recording,
There you
talk
go.
to yourself. That's amazing. I don't love talking to the mirror, because unless you're recording it, you're going to miss pieces of it. Right. So, but find a way, like, what do you want to be different? And don't get into the spiral of just complaining. And also notice, do you want other people to be different? Is your complaint that other people are not doing what you want them to do?
Now, what are your thoughts on this? And I've heard this a couple of times. What we complain most about others is the thing we don't like about ourselves.
Potentially, but I would encourage people, if they're noticing that other people are creating chaos. My question, I think I've said this to you before, Rico. The best advice I ever got was, "Robyn, you are resilient. Stop making decisions that make you prove it." And I was so offended. Like, how dare you suggest that the chaos in my life is my own fault?
Exactly.
And then I realized it was because the people in my life I was allowing to be in my life were creating chaos.
Yeah, so you are the 5 people you surround yourself with.
You get to decide. So if you are complaining about other people, yes, look and see, is that something that's affecting me? But then more importantly, why is that person in your life? I was talking to a client recently who was talking about being at an event where this other person was, and this person, and blah, blah. And I'm like, why do you keep putting yourself in a situation where you're at dinner with that person? What are you doing? It never occurred to them that they could say, no, I don't want to go to these dinners with that person.
Okay.
So if you can answer the question, what do you want to be different, and make sure that it's something you have control over, and that control may be cutting someone out of your life, you're well on your way to clarifying the problem.
Okay, that's good. And one of the things when we as speakers we also train is we record ourselves, but also have a transcript. You can read the things you said, so that might be a good combination. All right, let's go to number 2.
3 options: record yourself, watch it with the sound off, and watch it with only the sound and not the video.
There you go. So you can see all the body language.
Yep.
Well, you are a TED speaker. All right, so number 2, what's the WTF for number 2?
All right, so you're going to craft your strategy. This is the place where you're going to plan for success. You're going to anticipate the challenges. And this is things like problem deconstruction. Let's look at the different stages, the different parts. How do we make this smaller so we can do it in small steps? You're going to do backcasting. Backcasting is start with the positive. Oh, we succeeded. How do you get there? What does that look like? You're also going to do a pre-mortem, and a lot of people don't do a pre-mortem. And what that is, you want to do this thing, you didn't succeed. It failed. Why? What got in your way? Make your brain go through the process of figuring out, if I fail, what's the thing that would cause me to fail? Because that's going to help you figure it out. So that's 2, craft your strategy.
So I like the pre-mortem. We did that in the military a lot. And what helped us, especially if you're in the organization, you're in a workforce, you're in business, one of the ways we set up our teams is to say, listen, there's no right or wrong. This is like working out a theory or a hypothesis. Our hypothesis is if we do X, we'll get to Y. Well, if we almost got to Y, but we didn't. What was it we did not consider? What caused us from not reaching Y? What do we need to course correct to eventually get there? And it's a constant laboratory of testing without changing the outcome where we want to end up going, but our route might change. And it's amazing how, especially whether you're in sales or your team or you're a leader, the stress goes away. and creativity just needs to come up. But it's that constant post-mortem, what worked, what didn't, where can we force multiply to get there? And it's just a testing element. So post-mortem is a critical one.
Pre-mortem, before it goes wrong, the pre-mortem part of it, which
Right.
is the same thing, but before it breaks is great.
Even better.
That's the whole point of this strategy point.
Okay.
And, be careful about groupthink in that space where everybody starts going, yeah, that's a good idea. And nobody's saying, wait a minute, we're landing on the mountain. We want to be on the beach. There's a valley between.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Anybody think about that? All right, so let's talk about number 3.
So then you're going to build your tactical structure. This is where you equip yourself. This is your resources. You figure out what skills you need, what knowledge you need, what processes need to happen. And the mistake that I see entrepreneurs make at this stage is they are hyper independent. They think they have to do it all themselves. And I'm like, if you're missing skills, you don't have to go learn it. You can hire someone with those skills. You can barter with someone with those skills. You can go find someone who has the knowledge. So at the tactical place, that's the place where you start looking for that hyper independence, that I'll do it all myself because then it'll be perfect. My rule is if someone else can do it at 80%, you have them do the 80% and you pick up the 20%.
Yeah, I like that. Now, do you define that you have that lack of skill in the pre-mortem?
So what we find is that when you're trying to figure out your strategy and you're starting to understand your strategy, and then you move that into the tactical space and you start figuring out, okay, what do we need for this strategy to work? That's where we determine what our skills are missing, what resources are missing, what knowledge do we need, what processes do we have to create. That's created here in this tactical spot.
Gotcha. Okay. So number 4.
All right, this is the hard one. This is where I spend most of my time, right? This is the psychological barriers.
Yes.
These are the things, this is the head trash and the self-sabotage and the imposter syndrome and the, I know I should be doing it, I'm not doing that thing. This is where we start digging into that. And this is where it's really easy for people who are super, super successful to start hiding the problem because they've gotten good at doing what they do because nobody knows they can't do it. And so they don't want to tell people. And this is the point where I tell my clients, you either trust me and tell me the whole truth or you don't need me.
And that's so important, right? Having that truth, that trust with people. And that's very difficult to do, whether it's someone that you're paying to have that kind of level of trust or someone in your life. And that goes back to the people you surround yourself with. Are they there to lift you up, to be that shoulder, to be honest with you when you, even though you may not want to hear it, are the key things that help you to overcome that?
The other thing, I guess, to notice here is that there are 2 types of fear.
Okay.
Right? We've got trauma-based fear, and then we've got intuition-based fear. So trauma-based fear is the kind, when people say success is on the other side of fear, they're talking about trauma-based fear.
Okay.
And these are implicit memories where we maybe only have emotion, but the cause is missing. Because when you're in trauma, your hippocampus gets suppressed and memories don't get created correctly. Or you might have explicit memories where you can verbally explain, this is why I'm afraid, this is why I'm not doing this. So this psychological barrier might be a trauma-based fear that we have to walk through. It may also be an intuition-based fear. And you've had this happen, I'm sure, where you just know this is not the right thing to do. I don't know why, but this is not the right thing to do. And if you decide success is on the other side of fear and you walk through it, you get smacked in the face.
Yes, every time. Yeah, and there's that intuition. I mean, we even if we're younger or there's something in our hippocampus go, this looks, smells, sounds a lot like that time, and it wasn't a good outcome. There's a lot, too many of these things seem similar, and that's our protective sequence of saying, this looks like, that person reminds me of this person, and that was a really bad relationship. So it's that natural protective scenario.
It doesn't feel right.
Right. Exactly. We ignore our instincts, and because of everything happening in our world, we tend to ignore that until, I should have. If you've ever said that, that's because you ignored your instincts and just kept going with the group or that group think, as you were talking about, Dr. Robyn, or you thought this was different enough. But our gut knows, our mind knows, no, that doesn't look or smell or feel the same as it should.
You know that feeling when you're walking out of the house and you're like, I'm forgetting something and you can't remember what it is?
Yeah.
That's your emotional brain going,
Yeah.
hey, I don't have words, but hey. And then you get 20 minutes down the road and you finally have silence and the emotional brain goes, dummy, you
Yeah.
forgot whatever it is.
Yeah, your phone.
Same with intuition, right?
Exactly.
That's the same with intuition, the psychological barrier space where you have to tell the difference between trauma-based fear, which you have to walk through, and intuition-based fear, which you have to heed.
So how does in your studies of peak performance and going back to you being a volleyball player, what was your psychological barrier that you discovered that kept you from constantly playing at your peak?
So I think for me, if I started out poorly, like if I made a couple of bad plays, I would get in my own head. And then it would just, I couldn't pull it back together. Like I would have to get off the court, like get through that particular game or set or whatever and get off the court. And then my business partner, my volleyball partner was a great guy. And he would just be like, Robyn, get your act together. Like, what are you doing? You can play this game. I know you can. I've seen you do it. It was never the other team. Like guys on the other team would talk smack to me and I would be like, I came to see your game, not hear your mouth. I hope you brought it. Like I was all up in like, I have no problem with you talking smack, but I would get in my own way if I made a couple of bad plays or didn't have my feet under me the way I should have at the beginning.
So as you look back, did that have anything to do with your upbringing, or like you were talking about, was that a trauma-based or what kind of?
Yeah, so for me, that was very much the voice in my head. You're not good enough at this. Last time you succeeded, maybe the opponents weren't as tough.
Right.
Like, it was that track that would run that if I didn't succeed right away, I wasn't going to be successful because I wasn't actually good. I was faking it.
Gotcha. So what can we do to start to adjust? So let's talk about an executive that just got promoted. They got 10 people under them. Maybe they're going through that in their mind because they were successful as an individual, and now they're expected to be successful with a group. How does that person build the confidence that is consistent versus situational?
So I don't think you're going to disagree with this. I don't think that's something you do on your own. I don't think that's something that you just suddenly decide, I'm going to now be this person and you become that. I don't think that's how that works. I think you find mentors, you find coaches, you find people to help you. You know, I was a better volleyball player because I had a good volleyball partner. I had coaches, I had people to help me. I would have not been the player I was if I had just decided, I'm going to go play volleyball. That's not how it would have worked. And I think the same is true of being a good leader, a good executive, a good founder, a good CEO. Whatever the next level is for you, you don't make those steps on your own. Yes, you can read books. Yes, you can watch videos. Yes, you can practice. But without a good sounding board, without someone, you help people do this, you know what this looks like. You don't do this on your own.
No, you do not. But initially, because ego, right? I got promoted. I'm the top person. Now I'm finally in charge. There's a time between that euphoria of the assumption of winning, and then all of a sudden, and then you fall on your face 5 or 6, 7 times and realize maybe I can't. And some people don't even get to that point. They, like you said, they stay angry. They micromanage. They take advantage of people. They make the environment psychologically unsafe and create that friction because they never take the time to be more introspective as to what am I doing wrong? It's everybody else. You know, so for anybody who may be listening that, you know, find themselves in that situation and you really want to take the steps to become a better leader, a better manager, heck, a better person, you know, not only do we have those 5 paradigms, but it starts exactly as Dr. Robyn was talking about. Find a mentor, find a coach, find someone. But I think the greatest advice you just gave, Dr. Robyn, is that you got to start with yourself and be willing to ask for help, even if you don't know what's wrong. Because whenever we try to do things on our own, we only have a certain limit of things that we can do based on our experiences, our background, our history, our IQ. That's limited. And it's also very focused on ourselves from our perspective. when you have people like a Dr. Robyn who can take a step back and objectively look at everything else and apply their experience, their background, their successes, that gives you a whole different perspective on what you need to do, how you need to do it, but it's based on you. Would you agree with that, Dr. Robyn?
I would agree with that. I want to add an interesting caveat here because, and you know I think this, Rico, the coaching world is a very deep pool full of very shallow people.
Yeah.
Right. It is hard. And I know from experience of hiring my own coach and from working with other people who have finally found me and been like, oh, this has been awful. So there's kind of two types of coaches. You've got coaches who are general contractors who come in with, these are the types of houses I build. I will build you this house or this house or this house. Which house do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And those type of people are going to build you a box and then you will be box shaped. So if you want to be box shaped, hire someone who builds boxes. The other, I know this is ridiculous. The other kind of coach is someone who's more like me. I have a toolbox. I have a very deep toolbox. I have tons of tools. What tools would you like? I have that tool. No worries. We'll find that tool. I will show up and will I show you, here's a really pretty house I can build for you. No, because I don't know what kind of box you want. I don't want to make you box shaped. I will tell you, I have tools. Let's dig in together and figure out what you need and we'll build it together. The thing is, someone like me, you need to trust explicitly. I know I said it before, I'm going to say it again, right? If someone's building you a regular box-shaped house, they've built box-shaped houses before, they can probably do it again. You don't need to trust them at the level. If you're going to help me figure out what shape your house needs to be and what you want to build and what you want to be different, you've got to be willing to tell me the whole truth. You got to tell me what's going on. Don't hide the fact that you have a wife and a boyfriend. Share that with me. I do not care. I do not judge. I don't have any opinions about it. I'm here to make your life better. So that's a question I ask my clients. Who are you allowing to judge you and why? Because if you're allowing people to judge you, why are they judging you? And what are you holding back from them because of that? Mm-hmm. So yes, hire a coach. I know that I went on a tangent.
No,
but don't hire someone who's going to make you box shaped.
No, that leads perfectly to my next question. What are some of the top myths your clients came to you with, the assumptions they had, that after spending time with you, you were not only able to course correct, but helped them to finally reach that level of vulnerability?
They come to me, well, obviously coaching is stupid. That's one I get a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I hear you. I've hired some coaches myself where I'm like, what are we doing here? I'm smarter than you are and you don't have any clue what's happening here.
Right.
So yeah, I totally get that. Also that the belief that because they've done it themselves before, they can do it again. Mm-hmm. They don't recognize that they've been fooled by randomness in their own lives. And so they're like, it worked before. Why won't it work again? Because this isn't a situation for a hammer. Right? We need a tape measure.
Exactly.
We don't need a hammer.
Duct tape maybe, but not a hammer.
Yeah. That's a big one. Another one that people come to me with is that I'm going to fix other people for them. Like they'll come and they'll complain about things. And I'm like, you know that that's a them problem. Your options are tolerate it, ask them to change it, kick them out of your life. Like those are your options. It's the difference between having a boundary and having a rule.
Okay, what's the difference? Yeah, go ahead.
A rule is you will behave this way. And adults make rules for children. Children get in trouble because they don't follow rules. As an adult, you should never get in trouble. You are not a child. You are not following rules. Rules are thou shalt do this. A boundary is if you do this thing, then I will behave this way. So for me, a boundary is if you are verbally abusive to me, I will leave the room. That's a boundary. You don't have to change. You can continue doing whatever you're doing. I'm going to change my behavior if you cross my boundary. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And I don't think too often people think about those two different things, right? They almost seem similar. And too often we don't put enough boundaries of how people should interact or how I'm going to interact or how I'm going to respond. I've seen too many individuals friends and family that are so worried about what that other person's going to say or react to that they can't sleep, they'll be stressed, all these other things. And I asked them, you're not, exactly you said, you're not responsible for them. If that's how you feel, if that's what's natural to you and they don't respect that, that's their problem. That's not you.
And you know that the only people who have a problem with boundaries are people who want to cross them.
Exactly. Absolutely, they do. So, Mental MacGyver, where did that come from?
I was talking to a client who had just recently exited a very successful branding marketing firm. We were having a conversation, we were fixing something, we're right toward the end of the conversation. And he jokingly said to me, "You just need some string, a button, and some bubble gum, and you can make it work."
Yes.
Because we had found a solution for the situation he was under. And I just kind of giggled and said, "Yeah, I'm like Mental MacGyver." And it was completely a throwaway line. Like I
Mm-hmm.
literally didn't even think about it. And he stopped. He goes, "Robyn, that's exactly what you do. That's such a great example. Yes, you need to use that." And I kind of laughed at him. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "No, I'm serious. You need to use that right now." So my husband does my graphic design, website design, because that's his business. He has his own business. So I'm like, "Okay, fine." So I texted him and I'm like, "Hey, can you check and see if mentalmacgyver.com is available?" And that I just sent it. I'm like, "Okay, I sent it. Fine." Several minutes later, I get a text back from my husband and he says, "Okay, so we own it. What are we doing with it?"
I always try to find and reframe situations. You've been through a documentary worth of experiences. If you could reframe and pick something positive from your time in a cult or in those seemingly negative parts that everybody makes it so bad, what is something that shaped who you are today in those experiences, that because of that, you're able to help other people find themselves and get rid of that head trash?
I got my work ethic from being in a cult, right? Protestant work ethic, got that there. I got a lot of my compassion from being through trauma, right? There's very little that someone can say to me that I can't connect with.
Mm-hmm.
So my ability to have empathy and compassion and caring and nurturing and be the rock in the hurricane. The way I describe it is I will be the rock in the hurricane and I will grab onto your anchor and I will haul in it as hard as I can to bring you into shore. But if you cut the rope, I'm not swimming out after you. That's my boundary, right? So those are things I learned from being in a cult, is the ability to be nurturing and kind and compassionate. I learned to have boundaries by having my boundaries crossed many occasions, right? The three things I mentioned about my husband, not very bright, badly in debt, had a drug problem. Those were silver linings. Those turned out to
Sure.
be good things that got me out of this situation. The situation with my second husband, where he was not kind to me, but I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. I had a lot of opportunities there, despite the psychological trauma that I then had to go to therapy for,
Sure.
that I came out of, that benefit me now.
So
So
all
they're
those past
there. You just look for
experiences
'em.
gave you frameworks to be empathetic to other people.
Mhm.
Maybe your experiences were way worse than theirs, so you're able to become objective, in different ways. And I think too often we think that the problems that we're going through are the biggest problems in the world until we speak to someone who's had
Or
something bigger.
the other side. What I also see is people saying other people have it worse, my problems aren't that bad, and therefore my
Yeah,
problems aren't problems. Like,
right.
problems are not pie. That's not the way it works. Like, yes, there are people who have had much. I actually have a couple of people I know who grew up in satanic cults. Their situation was much worse than
Sure.
mine.
Yeah.
That doesn't make mine not bad.
The
So
one
it,
big WTF that I'm getting from this conversation is don't be afraid to speak.
mhm.
Go out there and find someone who's willing to be there for you, that allows you to be vulnerable. Understand the root causes of why some of the things are happening, and being honest with yourself, right?
Mhm.
And I love like your 5 paradigms. What do you want to change? That's an honest, difficult question that most people would probably be afraid to answer, right?
Mhm.
Being in silence.
And don't push your feelings down. We
Okay.
are so good at that in this culture of hiding our feelings. I'm fine. I
Mm-hmm.
call it the volcano method to conflict resolution. You're fine till you explode. Let's not do that. But you said it. Pay attention to what you're feeling, figure
Mm-hmm.
it out, talk to somebody. That means you can't tell me you don't have feelings.
So, Dr. Robyn, tell me, who do you work with? What do you do for them? And why would anyone want to hire you?
I work with founders, executives, high performance people, athletes, like you've mentioned those people, the people they've achieved things in their life, or they are achieving things in their life, whatever that looks like. And you can talk about it like, oh, get your competitive advantage, be mentally tough leader, create unstoppable sales teams, maximize business growth. All of those are really nice chat GPT. This is what Robyn does.
Right.
What I actually do is connect with you where you are, and we go farther together.
And I can tell you from personal experience, you're one of the few people that within meeting 10 minutes, you just can't help but opening up. You can feel how genuine you are, how compassionate you are, how honest you are in wanting to help and really help people get through their head trash stuff and find their genuine selves, if you will. And any conversation I always have with you always leads me better, right? It helps me to think better. It helps me to understand myself better. So if you're an executive, high performer, anyone that is reaching that plateau, or you're wondering, I have all these great things, but I'm still miserable, and you want to know why, reach out to Dr. Robyn. I promise you, she will find and use her tools to get you through all that head trash. What are some other ways people can find you, Dr. Robyn?
So I'm on LinkedIn. Find me, Dr. Robyn Lynette, on LinkedIn. My website, mentalmacgyver.com. I have a YouTube channel that's at Dr. Robyn. I used to do my own little podcast, so there's different stuff on there. Also, my talk, Take Out the Head Trash, How to Fight the Demons Keeping You Awake at 3 a.m. is there's a version of it that's on YouTube. But my website's the easiest place. You can get on my calendar there. There's a phone number there. You can email me. I would love to have a conversation. I love people. I love conversation.
Yes, you do. So one way we end our show is that our previous guest left you a question to answer. Yes. What one thing would you tell your younger self in that moment that would change the course of your life if you knew it then?
You are smarter than you think. You are smarter than other people think.
Okay.
And you get to determine the direction of your life.
Nice. All right, so now it's your turn. What is one question you would like to leave our next guest to answer?
Oof, there are so many things in your life that are not your fault, but they are your problem. How could I not ask, what do you want to be different? How could I not choose
I was
that
going to
one?
say, what would you like to be different?
And that has to be about them. They aren't allowed to tell me they want like politics to be different. It's something they can actually do themselves.
Gotcha. I'm going to make that specifically.
Because lots of people can vent about politics. Don't let them go there.
No. It'll be about them. I will make sure of that. Dr. Robyn, is there anything else as a what's the fix that we haven't discussed that you feel would be important for our listeners to hear?
I think it's important to realize that you can absolutely burn hot, you can burn fast, and you don't have to burn out. You get to control that. And I think that that's what people don't realize is they get to control whether they burn out or not.
Thank you, Dr. Robyn. I could speak with you and talk to you, and we have for hours and hours and hours. So thank you so much for taking so much time out of your schedule to spend time with us, to share your wisdom and your knowledge. Has been an absolute great adventure. Thank you, and continue to do what you do, because I know there's so many of us will definitely our benefit because you do the things that you're doing.
Oh, thank you for being a great host, Rico. It was my pleasure to be here.
And for all of you guys out there, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Continue to hit that like button, leave some comments. That's how we grow from here. And remember, even though when life throws you a WTF moment, just stop, take a step back, and ask, what's the fix? Until next time, I'm Mr. Rico. We'll see you then.